Hey, what's up, y'all, and welcome to the second episode of the Review Podcast. I am August C. Jones, and like I've said before, if you've seen or listened to the first episode, this is just strictly reviews on this podcast, which I'm going to be doing trailer, movie, and show reviews alike. And so, just to get right into it, this one is going to be a special themed one called A Descent into Madness, which I will be reviewing 3 movies. And I'm going to throw in an extra one that follows along that same subject or that topic or whatever. First movie being The Lighthouse, as well as I'm going to be reviewing Joker and The Shining. And because I'm reviewing The Shining, and I'm doing it in those orders, after The Shining, I'm going to do a review on Doctor Sleep. I've been wanting to put this Doctor Sleep review out. I was supposed to put it out like a few weeks ago, and I just didn't. Things happen, life happens or whatever. But I'm going to be reviewing it on here. It's going to be the last one. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So the first movie, like I said, is The Lighthouse. Now, The Lighthouse is a special film, to say the least. So this movie is starring Robert Pattinson as well as Willem Dafoe. And it's about these two guys who basically have a job to run a lighthouse for a certain amount of time, and through that, they kind of, like I said with the theme, go into a slow descent into madness. Well, at least Robert Pattinson's character go through a slow descent into madness, and it's just how they deal with that. The isolation of it just being them two, no other people to interact with and everything else, and just how certain things in their mind just start to crumble. And just to go into this is one of those A24 movies that will not grab a lot of people. Now, this movie was a low, kind of like indie film or whatever. Not a lot of people knew about this. Even if like people were to see the trailer, I don't see a lot of people being like, unless you're really a person that loves movies and studies movies, or, really like are invested in movies in that type of sense, like the cinephiles or whatever, you're not really going to look at this film as something that you're going to put it on your list to go see. And this is one of those movies where, the way it was shot and written and stuff is going to throw a lot of people off because it is weird. It is a very weird film, but at the same time, it is one of those films where the acting and the atmosphere and a lot of it matters. Just to get into it, Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe do a great job, an awesome job up in this. This movie is just centered around these two people, just these two people from beginning to end. You're just there with these two people for these like weeks, from these days to weeks to months or however long they're out there. And you're starting to see the kind of like relationship form in between them. It's not perfect. It's not one of those like, I look at him like a father and I look at him like a son. It's one of those things where they have a job to do and they're there to do it while dealing with the fact that it's just them two and everything else. And not everybody can handle that isolation. And Robert Pattinson's character is one of them characters that this is his first time doing this, so he is not prepared for this. But Willem Dafoe's character he's done this for years, so he is used to this, and this is just nothing to him. This is just another day at work and everything else. And just the way that their characters like just play off of each other, I love it. You really get into like the interactions between them, and both actors do a great job with bouncing off of each other with their roles, and they did a great job. Anybody that looks at Robert Pattinson and just look at him in Twilight and be like, oh, just the Twilight guy and blah blah blah, and down him because he is the new Batman and Matt Reeves' Batman movie, and want to just say all this stuff, it's like, check out his other films, give him a chance. Don't look at Twilight. Look at the other films that he's in and just kind of go off of that. You will see something special, especially in this movie. as well as like I said, it is weird. It has a lot of imagery. It has some disturbing, but then a lot of weirdness to it. It's some directing choices in this movie that will send you kind of like, what the hell am I watching? You know, it's one of those type of movies, but it's one of those films where it has an interpretation of, when you're watching it, you're gonna get something out of it that's different from somebody else. Other people might watch it and be like, "This is weird. I don't like it." Blah blah blah, and just leave it. But that's the type of film it is. It is an A24, and A24 usually is one of those type of films where you have great acting, you have a well constructed film, but it is kind of weird to the point where it throws the average moviegoer off as far as that go. Now, it is a psychological thriller. Me personally have already stated before that psychological thrillers I don't really do good with. You know, they don't really appeal to me. But at the same time, um, you know, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this movie. It keeps you interested from beginning to end. It's not anything that major happens in this movie. There's no breakout like shooting, no explosions, no nothing. It's just two people in on the island together and just how they interact with each other. That's really all about it. And this movie is shot in black and white. It's basically, that was one of the things that really stood out to me, was that even from looking at the trailer to watching this movie, you could swear that besides all the like kind of like choices that the filmmaker made as far as like what was shown in there and everything else, and just kind of the weirdness to it, you would have thought that this was a movie made in, you know, back in the day. You know, it was an actual black and white film before color was a thing. And just the way it looks, it's not just in black and white. It looks like a organic, original black and white film. It's crazy. And it has a smaller aspect ratio like the older films back in the day, because, you know, the TVs and screens were much smaller, so they didn't have to have a wider screen like we have nowadays with our regular TVs and IMAX and stuff like that. You know, it is a smaller ratio, but at the same time, as you begin to watch the film, it kind of just goes away. Like, it's nothing, one of them things where it's like it constantly bothers you. It becomes non-existent throughout the rest of the film because you're focused on the characters and just how everything is like just evolving around them. And just, I know I'm going to keep saying this, the descent into madness with Robert Pattinson's character, it is questionable, like not questionable, but it is understandable. As you're watching this character, you know that this is the first time doing it, and just certain things are starting to get to him mentally. You start to see the breakdown. It's not something that just so happens out the blue and he just starts, you know, acting whatever. It's just one of them things where it slowly happens, and you like, I can see myself going, acting just the way he is, because you're isolated, and just the isolation can get to you. Even though you have this other person to bounce off of, it's not, this is a person that you barely even know. So in a sense, you might as well be alone. And it's just, it's like, I get it. And this really is kind of like a love letter, homage to black and white films. And this is one of those films where it's like, people who complain about Hollywood isn't original anymore and they don't put out original pieces, all we see is prequels, sequels, spin-offs, and all these remakes, reboots, and whatever. It's like, this is a film that is an original piece, that is something vastly different from what is marketed in Hollywood to the masses. And it's, I mean, I don't even know if it's still in theaters. I doubt if it's still in theaters, but you can more than likely find it in streaming really soon. You probably rent it and, you know, or buy it on DVD, Blu-ray, or whatever. This is one of those films where it is an original piece. So it's like, if you're in the mood for something original, something outside the box, it certainly was outside of my box, but outside the box of what you normally would pick out as a movie to, you know, watch or whatever. Just try it. You may like it, you may not. You may love it, you may hate it. But whatever the case, give it a chance. This is an original piece. And basically, personally, I didn't think it was as great as everybody was saying, but I did appreciate what it did and just how the movie was. I just appreciated it. I don't regret, spending my, my, AMC stubs going to go see it, but it's like I don't regret spending my time watching it. It was a good flick, and I think you guys should go ahead and check it out. I don't even know if I could rate this. I'm gonna just leave it at that. I'm gonna give it a recommended. Check it out. But in any case, that was a long review. Let's go ahead and jump over to the next review, which is Joker. Now, Joker stars Joaquin Phoenix and Zazie Beetz. And this movie, okay. So going into this movie, I knew that it would be a character piece. More than just your average comic book movie film people are accustomed to nowadays. So I conditioned my mind to that. I knew not to expect any big explosions, crazy action, etc. I just took the movie as it was given to me. Now, first off, this movie really is a character piece on the character Arthur Fleck and how society and just life transitioned him from being a good-hearted guy into a cold-blooded, insane killer. It's not your average type of movie where a person who, despite their upbringing, can become something greater. This is a guy who is molded by his environment and becomes a product of said environment. And I love how the backstory of the Joker parallels to Bruce Wayne, but with a different result, basically. Bruce Wayne, who grew up rich and was affected by his parents' death due to the chaos in Gotham City and became Batman. But you have Arthur Fleck, who was really just a kind of middle class, or actually I guess you could say lower class citizen, and became a victim of society and became the Joker. I kind of I liked how that just kind of paralleled or whatever. I mean, you really couldn't pull it out of anything else because we really don't get a steady backstory to Joker or whatever in the comic books. You have a lot of them to choose from, but you don't really have a definitive origins of the Joker. So that's where I could pick from this movie. And speaking of the character Arthur, Joaquin Phoenix does an amazing job portraying the character and does make him sympathetic, but not without its negatives. And I know that was just a big thing or whatever with people trying to be like, oh, you're making him sympathetic and all this stuff. But at the same time, it's putting it in a way to where it's like, even though you can sympathize with this character, you don't condone his actions. And that's really just putting it out. And I thought the humor was done extremely well, as I found myself laughing throughout the whole film. Which is crazy because I never thought that I would find this movie as humorous as I did, but I did. And this movie was a great standalone film, and it really don't need a sequel or a connection to a Batman film or any other film at that. This is like one of those films where, you need it like this, bam, and just, you don't need to go anywhere else with it. Even though they're talking about possibly doing a sequel, which I don't think that they need to. It's just leave it alone. Let it be the way it is. But in conclusion, this was really an awesome film with a great cast, great acting, really great writing. The movie was well directed, very humorous and deep, with a whole lot to say in its society and its social commentary. The feel of the movie was done really good, and it's not your average comic book movie, and it is a bit artsy, but at the same time, it is well constructed. I was highly satisfied after seeing this movie. And I feel like if you like the Joker and you want to see a movie with a different take on the comic book character that's not all explosions and crazy CGI, and but focuses on the character or characters at hand and relies more on the story concerning the characters, then I really think that you should go ahead and give this movie a try. I believe that you can still catch it in theaters or whatever. If you can, go ahead and do it. If you can't, then you probably might have to just go ahead and catch it on DVD or, streaming. But I really do recommend it. And I'm not saying that it is a masterpiece like a lot of critics say it is, but I really do think that it is a great film, and it surprised the hell out of me, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a 7. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the third film I'll be reviewing, which is The Shining. Now, recently this year, this was the first time in its entirety I saw this movie. I've seen bits and pieces. I already knew how it was going to end and everything else, but this is my first time actually sitting down and watching the whole film of The Shining. And I just want to say that I was very disappointed. Very, very disappointed. I know a lot of people put this in their top horror films of all time, or maybe the top, or whatever the hell. I just really did not find this movie to be like good. I mean, it's just my opinion. It's just my opinion. Now, of course, I know all of you know it goes without saying, but I'm gonna still say it though. This movie is an adaptation of a Stephen King novel of the same title, and it stars Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall, and it's just about Jack Nicholson's character Jack Torrance. He and his family stay at this hotel for like 5 months, I believe, to be the caretakers in this down season. And this hotel really don't have the best reputation, and it doesn't have like the positivity up in it that they would expect. It has a gruesome history in which it basically messed with Jack Torrance's mind as he is staying, as he and his family is staying throughout these months, which slowly drives him into a madness type of state and drives him to want to get rid of his family, and everything just goes downhill from there. So just to get into why I just kind of don't like it or whatever. Now, I know I'm looking at this almost 40 years later, and I'm looking at it with a modern perspective. So the movie may end up coming across differently than a person who actually seen it in theaters around the time that it originally hit theaters in 1980. And also just letting you guys know that I have not read the book, so I can't do any heavy duty comparison from the book to the movie and the differences and similarities and all that stuff. This is all from the perspective of just going there and witnessing it, and now I'm talking about how the movie affected me or just my opinions and everything else. And so with that in order, let's go ahead and get into my thoughts. Now, Jack Nicholson was great in his role. The only creepy thing about this movie, and basically just one of the best parts of this movie, was him as Jack Torrance. Even from like just him being a regular guy to when he just starts going crazy with the axe and here's Johnny and everything else. He was one of the best parts. I mean, there are a few people that can play that type of role, like a Willem Dafoe or Nicolas Cage and everything else. But you know, he's one of those people that can play crazy and literally like you will believe him. Like, he plays it good as hell. Shelley Duvall was hit or miss with her acting. I don't know. It just didn't sit right with me. Like, I found a lot of just her reactions to stuff just kind of funny. And that's basically what happened with like a lot of the film. Is just certain parts that were supposed to be scary I found funny. And it wasn't like a kind of like entertaining funny that, you know, even though it was funny and it was supposed to be scary, I felt like this was enjoyable. I didn't find entertaining from it. I found entertainment from it, but it wasn't anything super crazy. It was like, you know, this is not scary. This is funny. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to really be getting out of it. And I didn't really find it creepy at all. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I'm looking at it from a modern standpoint, so maybe I'm just seeing it totally different. And I'm not really into psychological thrillers, and that's really kind of what this movie is. And it's just really telling, because it really did not affect me anything of the sort. And I know a lot of people feel differently about this, like this movie and everything else, but I found myself not really particularly being affected by those type of films, and this film being included. And some of the editing choices I wasn't too fond of, but it ended up changing toward the middle of the film, and after that I was okay. And this movie moves slow, but at the same time very quickly. Meaning, all throughout the film, I felt like nothing truly happened while nothing was happening. There were a lot of time jumps from days to months in their time at the hotel. And I do get it. They're supposed to spend 5 months in a hotel, and you can't quite cover that whole movie spanning for like, you can't cover all of that in a movie spanning 2.5 hours. And I get that. But it's all in how it's handled and how it was shown to us in the movie, and I felt like it could have been a lot more done with it. Like, I don't know, it felt kind of like really incomplete. Now, I believe in the book, because, novels can cover a lot more than what a movie can cover. There was more than likely a lot more character development, a lot more stuff shown with the characters, or, just Jack's character and everything else within the book that they couldn't cover in the movie, as, they had to change around some stuff, cut out some things just to bring it to life in the movie theater live action. But at the same time, I felt like it kind of suffered for me, as a movie, when it took out certain things of us, like getting to know more about Jack and really what book was he writing, what type of writer was he, and just it. And I know a lot of people might think that like those are nitpicks and everything else, but those things kind of matter because it will get you to care about that character, in a certain sense. So when he goes into that like madness, kind of like craze, possessed kind of like state, it's like you kind of feel for it, like, oh, I didn't want him to be this way, but this and that. It's like you get a little bit more invested in it. But yeah, like I said, he needed a little bit more character development and just a little bit more chemistry between him and his family, so that the slow drive into madness and ultimately him wanting, to kill his family would have been more effective. And also, when he was in this crazed state trying to kill his family, more time could have been spent with that, and maybe a little bit more intensity along with it as he tries to hunt them down throughout the whole hotel. I don't know, like, once it got to that point, I just was not affected by it like I probably should have been, or like a lot of people were, but I don't know. It just didn't really sit right with me. But in conclusion, I really didn't think that this movie was all that great. The film was decent, okay even, but as a horror film, it wasn't there for me. The only standout in this movie was Jack Nicholson's character and how he played him. And everything else was okay. Certain things needed to be worked on a little bit more. Maybe there was more development in the novel, more than likely. But in the movie, it really just seemed like there was a whole lot missing. And honestly, I don't see what a lot of people see when they praise this movie as being a great film, because that's not what I got out of it. And for me, it does not have any rewatchability, but still, I do not regret watching it. But hey, but even though I didn't like it, don't mean that someone else who's watching it for the first time will feel the same way I felt, or they might end up loving it. Like, this is a masterpiece. This is great. This and that. So I encourage you that if you have not seen it, go ahead, check it out. But for me personally, it just did not strike any type of chord with me. And I'm going to go ahead and give that movie a 4. It didn't do it for me, but not every movie is going to knock your socks off or be great. So, hey, it is what it is. So, going to the last movie of this podcast to wrap everything all up is the sequel to The Shining, which is Dr. Sleep. Now, I'm going to try and keep this review short. That way I can end it off by 30 minutes. So, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So, this movie stars Ewan McGregor, Rebecca Ferguson, and Kylie Curran. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. And it's about a grown-up Danny Torrance who is dealing with alcoholism and just kind of like not in the right place in his life and everything else. Who ends up running into a little girl who has an immense power within The Shining. And even though it has its pros with her being powerful, it also comes with its cons when there is a cult that is sucking the lives out of kids with the Shining ability so that they can stay young, and they end up finding out that this girl exists, and so now it's on a hunt to get this girl so that they can get the power out of this girl, and Danny has to try to stop this cult from doing that. And basically, I felt the total opposite of this movie that I felt toward The Shining. I flat out love this film. I ended up, when I first saw it, I saw it at an early screening with Fandango. Oh, I think it came out like a week before it was supposed to, before it originally come out. And I went into this movie and I just came out of it. I'm like, this movie, I loved it. This movie was awesome. Like, the acting was really good, especially by Kylie Curran. The little girl up in the movie, she did an amazing job. She did a really, really good job. And she was kind of the lead. It was kind of like a balance between her and Ewan McGregor's character, Danny Torrance. You know, basically kind of like, you know, balancing or whatever. But she did an amazing job. She did a really good job. She was, I mean, you have a couple standout, but she was a major standout of this film. I really did like it. I really did like her up in this movie. Rebecca Ferguson, also, she did a really good job as the basically main antagonist, who is, what is it called? Rose the Hat. She came off kind of like creepy, vulnerable at certain points, just scary. You know, she was that type of character. And I really did like her in that role. I love the feel and the tone of the movie. The only thing I can say that it is kind of a bit too long, and then it does drag at certain points. But with this film, it does have a lot of nostalgia to it. Like, if you love the original Shining movie, you're going to get a treat out of this movie because it does have more than a few callbacks to the original film and everything else. Also, I do love the visual effects in this film. It was really good. Kind of like Inceptionist type, type of like, effects, whatever. But I really did like it. And it is a great sequel. And it does continue what Kubrick did up in like The Shining. I feel like this did it way better, but that's just my opinion. Just my opinion. You do have fleshed out villains. That's one of the things that I do like about this, is that even though it is long, it does take its time to flesh out the villains. That way, it spends time with the good guys, the protagonists, and it does spend a lot of time with the antagonists. So you, in a sense, kind of do feel sympathy, and you understand why they need to do what they need to do in order to survive and all that stuff. And it does deal with Danny and his troubled past with, like I said, the alcohol and everything else, and his life just not is together until this girl comes into his life and kind of like turns everything, I ain't gonna say turns everything around, but gives him more of a purpose than what he had before. And you do get an understanding for why it's called Dr. Sleep. Maybe it had more of a big thing in the book, but in the movie it was kind of like a little small part. And it was like, for this movie to be called Dr. Sleep, I thought it would have more of a major thing about it, but it was just something that really wasn't pertaining to the overall story. And and it's just like, it was, I don't know, it was whatever. It does have some creepiness to it, and it does have some things in there that some people might find unsettling, but it's whatever. It's nothing like too crazy. And I love how it goes more into the backstory and really explains a lot to people that more than likely haven't read the books. And I'm putting myself up in there as well. I'm not excluding myself because I myself have not read the book. This is just my first time knowing this story or anything about this story besides what was like shown in the trailers and everything else. But in conclusion, this movie is definitely worth checking out. Still in theaters. If you ever find a chance where you can go ahead and check it out, definitely go ahead and check it out. Especially if you love the original Shining movie, you're more than likely gonna love this. I know it kind of threw a lot of people off that it wasn't scary and all this stuff. I feel like it didn't need to be scary. I liked it just the way it was. It was creepy. It didn't need to be super duper scary. It does do a little bit more with it than the original film did, and I can appreciate that. And it does explain a little bit more with the characters, and it does way more with this movie than the original did, and that's what I appreciate about this film in overall. And yeah, that's really about it. I'm gonna give this movie a 9. It is one of my favorite films of this year. So yeah, that'll say a lot. But with that, that ends this podcast, this long podcast of the review podcast of Descent into Madness. So thank you guys for joining me, and I hope to catch you guys on the next one, on the next episode, which should be later on this week. I'm going to be talking about some period pieces, some recent ones that came out and everything else. So look out for that. The Irishman will be included in that. I still need to finish watching that. And yeah, like I said, thank you for listening, and I will catch you on the next one. Hey, before you guys leave, make sure you hit that like button as well as that subscribe button. And you see that little bell? Make sure you hit that to turn on your notifications. That way you'll be notified for anything that appears on my channel. Hope to see you guys next time. Peace out.